So the guy I was just talking about in the previous story, the leader of Grace Community Church, it's this guy. That's John MacArthur. He's the guy who's been around for decades. I believe he founded that church. He is arguably one of the most influential fundamentalist, patriarchal Christian preachers in the world. Like when he speaks, a lot of Christians absolutely listen. And this guy, I've talked about him before. He's disturbing for a lot of reasons. Some of them are not new, but I want to mention a couple things about this guy. Why does this guy ever make news in the secular world? Why does he ever cross my plate? A couple reasons. Well, for one example, in 2018, he criticized a different Christian ministry. Why? Because they honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's it. He was so mad that they honored him. He actually told his congregation that King was not a Christian at all, and that Reverend King was a, quote, non-believer who misrepresented everything about Christ and the gospel. He also lies in the name of Jesus all the time. He has denied climate change. He said God intended us to use this planet and that it is a disposable planet. When COVID was happening, he celebrated the lack of social distancing and the lack of face masks in his congregation. In fact, in the height of the pandemic in mid-2020, he ignored all the social distancing rules, told everyone to come to his church, no masks, no social distancing. This is months before vaccines were available to anybody. And he actually said to them, the good news is you're here, you're not distancing, and you're not wearing masks. And then in August of 2020, he said, there is no pandemic. This is after over 1 million people had died. And by the way, that October, there was a COVID outbreak at his church. He also has said, and this is a direct quote, no one is gay. He said this in California. So, this is a conspiracy theorist who regurgitates lies while telling a bunch of ignorant people that they are all facts. And this is when he's not doing his day job of being a misogynist, sexist, homophobe, etc. Now, here's why I'm talking about him. Earlier this year, this guy is 86. Earlier this year, he was in the hospital for a variety of health issues. His church actually said he needed a heart valve replacement. And that was news to me. I didn't know he had one of those, a heart. And then last week, his church said he has pneumonia and things are not looking good. And they also said, by the way, since he hasn't been around for a while, our church is losing a lot of money because he's the star attraction. So they recently announced budget cuts. Oh, well, so sad. So why do I bring all this up? There was some news this week about this guy, which is that he's dead now. Yeah, John MacArthur is dead. Completely gone. Do you want the obituary? Here's the obituary. He was a racist, sexist, conspiracy theorist who protected abusers. That's his legacy. That's the obit. So he died earlier this week. But there's a thing I want to talk about his life, which I think is really fascinating, because when this happened, when he died, I'll stop smiling for the optics. When he died, a lot of major newspapers, a lot of Christian media, they published their obituaries on the guy. I'm sure they were pre-written because this guy's been on his deathbed for a very long time. But a lot of them just kind of said, because again, I'm not mad at them for writing straight obituaries, but they just said he was very influential, he was very controversial, but this is what he did. Okay, fine. What I really appreciated, this is fascinating. This is an article that appeared in Baptist News Global, basically a very large wire outlet, in a sense, for Baptists around the world. But look at this title. This is shortly after he died. John MacArthur met his own definition of a false prophet. John MacArthur loved saying, I'm the right Christian. I'm the right kind of Christian. Everyone at this church is being the right kind of Christian, and everybody else is wrong and faking it. And we all need to call them out because they're bad Christians. And it's like, this guy didn't live up to his own standards. But look at what got published in this Baptist news site. How should we respond when someone who uses theology to promote ignorant, misogynistic, racist, power-mongering authoritarianism dies? How's that for an opening? After 55 years of using the church to promote his own power, John MacArthur, the wicked warlock of the West, is dead. Holy shit. Like, again, I don't expect this from any mainstream outlet. I definitely did not expect this coming from even a Baptist news outlet. And I know there are progressive Baptists out there, but in any religious outlet, was not expecting this. By the way, there's another thing John MacArthur was famous for. There's a Bible teacher named Beth Moore who used to be Southern Baptist. I think she's just Christian now. She left the Southern Baptist because lots of reasons. But after she was very outspoken of a lot of the bad stuff going on in the Baptist world, John MacArthur basically, I forgot if he tweeted this or he just said it, but his response to Beth Moore, go home. Like, basically, get in the kitchen. That's where you belong. How dare you speak about the Bible? That's what this guy's good for. Anyway, back to this article. I won't go through everything, but this is amazing. All the spiritual abuse MacArthur perpetrated from his pulpit stemmed from his fundamental understanding of reality. Like, he was abusive, no doubt, because he was a true believer that that's what you needed to be. He saw all reality through the lens of power and submission, and he believes you need to submit to God. All of you need to submit to me as your preacher because I have the direct line to God. And women need to submit to the men who need to submit to me, who submits to God. You get how this goes. This is amazing. He's also racist. So to MacArthur, white Europeans are blessed and enlarged thanks to being in a peaceful partnership with Israel, while black Africans are cursed to do the serving. MacArthur also used dehumanizing language about black people. You could see it right there. Don't make me say it. But he's said some very, very horrible things about black people. And basically he says that's the curse of Ham. That's in the book of Genesis. That's why they have the skin color that they have, because God cursed them. Yeah, he was racist too. We know, but this is a really thorough thing. So, of course, MacArthur couldn't imagine the idea of a woman. Oh, this is the Beth Moore thing. The idea of a woman standing behind a pulpit. As everyone was celebrating MacArthur's 50th year in the pulpit, he told Beth Moore, a conservative evangelical Bible teacher, Bible study leader, to go home. Yes, we talked about that. So, fascinating obituary right here. And this is the ending. If there is a Jesus and a judgment in the afterlife, then MacArthur had better hope, despite his decades of preaching retribution, that justice turns out to be restorative rather than retributive. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong. As the books are opened on his life, the verdict is clear. MacArthur doesn't deserve a memorial or a monument. He deserves a millstone, which is what you put around the neck of those who have sinned, according to the Bible. So, fascinating obituary. And I will say that was written by this guy, Rick Pidcock, who graduated from Bob Jones University, one of the most fundamentalist Christian schools in the country. And I don't think he's a fundy anymore. You can tell. But good for him. I mean, that was a great article. Well, here's what's interesting. After he published that piece, he shared this on Blue Sky. John MacArthur's words about what a false prophet's followers will be like on the left of your screen, set next to responses from his followers today to me pointing that out. And this is what those followers said to Rick. They basically did like Trumpy insults. Right-wing, alpha male, Rick sits down to pee. Rick abuses his own wife by making her work so he can stay safe in the protection of his own home. Oh, stay-at-home dad with pronouns in his bio. I think I've seen enough. This is the way they're responding to him criticizing John MacArthur. So, okay, that's interesting. But wait, it gets even more interesting because the same outlet, Baptist News Global, the guy who is the editor of the entire website, Mark Wingfield, the executive director and publisher of Baptist News Global, the next day he published his own article about John MacArthur. And look at what this one is titled: "When is the right time to speak the truth about toxic people?" This one's even better than the last one. I highlighted so many things in here, but look at this. When someone who has harmed real people over and over again dies, we need to pause and consider that reality. In part because those who are tempted to harm others need to understand they will have a payday someday, and in part because it's so painful for those who are victimized to hear others heap laurels on the person who harmed them. And of course, he is talking about MacArthur, because so many people said to his colleague, like, why are you doing this? Why are you trashing John MacArthur? The man just died. The man brought a lot of people to Christ. The man influenced so many preachers. How dare you speak ill of him right after he dies? And this response is saying, well, when's the right time? And I love that response because we see this not just with preachers, but like after a mass shooting, we see this all the time, right? Like Republicans constantly don't talk about gun policy or gun safety. This is not the time. A mass shooting just happened. How dare you? And it's like, well, when's the right time to talk about gun safety? Because we sure as hell are not talking about it right now. Same thing happened with the flooding in Texas that just happened recently. When should we talk about the irresponsible leadership at FEMA and alert systems for natural disasters? If now is not the time to talk about it, and by the way, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, was asked about that. Like, were there deficiencies? What are you going to do about it? And he yelled at the reporter for even bringing that up. How dare you? People have died. Don't ask us about that stuff. Trump did that too, I think. Like, the right time to talk about problems is as soon as possible and often and always. Otherwise, they're never going to get fixed. And some people never want to talk about them because they never want to fix the problem. And so I appreciate that this outlet is saying, yeah, we're going to talk about this now. Let me reiterate. John MacArthur did more harm to the cause of Christ than Paul Pressler, who is a Southern Baptist leader who is accused of sexual harassment, credibly accused. And that's saying a hell of a lot. Pressler took control of one denomination. MacArthur influenced pastors and lay leaders across evangelical Christianity and taught them to be mean-spirited, divisive, judgmental, and absolutely certain he alone held God's truth. That is the definition of a cult leader, not a pastor. Holy shit, let's keep going. MacArthur's theology was and remains toxic. It was and remains abusive. It was and remains untrue to the spirit of Jesus Christ. Not to say so, especially at his death, is to be complicit with allowing that theology to go unchecked. Unbelievable. And by the way, I'm going to pause right here. Den, do you want to bring this up? I'm just seeing this in the comment thread right now as we talk about a toxic person's death. And I'm hearing this for the first time. Aha. Interesting. He's publicly gone against Trump today. Sorry. How dare you all get my hopes up like that? Anyway, so John MacArthur, yes, now is the time to talk about what a horrible, horrible person he was. And this goes on. Just because someone dies doesn't mean they suddenly turn into a saint. Yes. Oh my God. I'm going to keep reading this because it is the most cutting obituary I think I've read about a horrible person. If we are going to note his passing, we must tell the full story because the evil lives on. When is the right time to tell the truth about a prominent figure who has passed? A week later? A month later? When we try to bury the evil a person did with their bones, we leave behind horrible ghost stories. I mean, man, live your life so that no one ever writes that sort of shit about you. And this is the thing. Every time I read an obituary this week about John MacArthur, a straight obituary, just a news obituary, they did mention the controversies. They did mention some of the nasty things he said and the way he functioned. They mentioned it. But none of them, because news, none of them just said, yeah, he was a horrible person and the world is better off without him in it. And so the fact that this religious news outlet is saying, yeah, let's just call him out and we got to do it now while people are paying attention. Good on Mark Wingfield for writing that. Kudos to Rick Pidcock for writing that, both for Baptist News Global. And that's the way John MacArthur should be remembered, as a nasty human being who made the world a worse place than he started with. So good riddance. Not sorry he's gone. There are some Christian leaders, people I strongly disagree with, who, when they die, I have seen in Christian outlets, Christian media outlets, other news outlets, an outpouring of grief and people saying, even if we disagreed, this guy was genuinely nice. I cannot remember how many people have died leaving a legacy like this, where so many people are like, yeah, I'm not sad about it. Grace Community Church is a horrible place. They treat people horribly. Even if he's gone, that church is probably not going to change its ways. There are a couple other people in this world that when they die, there will be people celebrating their death because everyone will be better off when they're gone. You tempted me with one earlier in this segment, but good on them for writing it. And that's the legacy. That's the horrible, toxic legacy John MacArthur has left behind. What questions do we have here? Well, ding dong. Indeed, the warlock is dead. If being supportive of anyone who's not exactly like you is against their religion, I am against their religion. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally understand. I'm a progressive lefty atheist. I'm in plenty of groups that have tried to instill purity tests in what they do. And you're not going to accomplish much if you have these purity tests. But when you go from, listen, there are some people I disagree with, but we have to work together because we're working against a common enemy. John MacArthur is very much like, oh, you only agree with me 99% of the time. You're the devil. And he made sure everyone at his church knew this too. That's why he's such a horrible person. It's not just he has a broken brain. It's that he made sure everyone in his church became as horrible as he did, unless you were one of the few who happened to break free at some point. They say that about him without a hint of irony or self-reflection. I don't know what we're talking about on that one. I don't know if you're talking about like the Baptist people writing about John MacArthur without that hint. But again, there are progressive Baptists. There are plenty of people who say, I'm pissed off at the Southern Baptist Convention for the way they're mishandling sexual abuse. There are people within the fold that call out the worst elements of it. And if the worst thing I can say about them is, well, they believe in a lot of BS. Okay, I do think that. But at the same time, if they're working within that environment to try to make it better, I don't know. I can give credit where it's due in that regard, I guess. Celebrating someone's death sounds monstrous. You know what's also monstrous? Using your life to harm other people, which is what John MacArthur did. So, I disagree on this front. There are some people you can absolutely celebrate when they're gone because they never did anything redeeming with their life, no matter how much they try to convince you otherwise.